Right, and we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me. I've just come off the back of another live stream and had to quickly set up all of the cameras for this one. So, yeah, let us know if you can hear me and you can see me okay, and welcome to an unboxing video of Crescent Moon. New game coming out soon from Osprey Games. And unlike some of my other unboxing videos, I actually know a bit about this one because I played it last night, and I'm going to be doing a video for Osprey Games at some point in the next couple of weeks. So let's dive in. Let's see what it's about. Yeah, Steve Mathers, artwork by Navid Rahman. This is a 4 to 5 player game. So there's the first thing, which is unusual. A lot of games coming out these days are, 1 player, 2 player, 3 player. This game is for 4 or 5 players only. If you don't have 4 players, it doesn't work. And that is because this is an asymmetrical game. And let's dive into the box and see what we can see. Thematically, it does explain when this game is set. Basically, the game takes place amidst the dramatic rise and fall of powers across the Middle East in the 10th century and onwards. Yeah, and the 5 different players, it's very much an asymmetric game. Not as asymmetric as a completely different game for all players, but each player does have their own special rules. Yeah, so today is going to be mostly an unboxing, but I will tell you a bit about the game because I do know about it. These are the player sheets for each of the 5 players, which is really good because it's got a summary of all of the actions on here that you can do, and it's specifically worded for you. So there are certain things, for example, the Warlord has the mass action on there, which no other player has. But if you look at the move action, that is on everybody's sheet, but it's slightly customized based on the number of players. So yeah. Player sheets. Now these are actually booklets. You get a little flavour text here, which actually gives you some indications as to what you need to be doing in the game. We have the unique attributes and very, very importantly, how you score points. How each player scores points is very different. And you need to be aware of what your objectives are. And you probably also need to be aware of what the other players' objectives are as well. And a summary of stuff on the back that is relevant for you. So this is absolutely essential. If the game didn't come with these player booklets, it would be very, very difficult to play. Anyway, so that's those. Let's have a look. There's no main game board for this game. What we have is we have lots of nice pieces. The first time I've seen these, so I've played it on Tabletop Simulator a lot, but I've literally only just taken this out of the bag, out of the box now. Ooh, these are nice, cloth bags, and this is the board. So the board is made up of these hexes. Let's take the cards out. Nice inlay as well. There you go. So yeah, so the game board will be made up of these hex tiles depending on, if I can get in, what map configuration you want. So although there doesn't look like there's many map tiles there, the back of the rulebook actually has various map setups depending on what you want to do. So for each map setup, there is a 4-player version and a 5-player version. Divided Land is the one that is recommended you use for your first game. Then we have Fresh Meltwater, we have Fertile Valley, we have Open Plains, and we have Meeting Point. These have obviously all been play tested and everything else. I guess you could create your own layout, but yeah, you've really got to know the game well in order to create a balanced one. So you've got 5 different map setups, whether you set it up for 4 players or 5, and then basically you build the map with these tiles. Let's just zoom in a bit and show you these tiles in a bit more detail. So yeah, different types of terrain which affects different things. Fertile land is obviously good for producing income. You have the quarries as well. You've got some mountains. The holy site is very important. That is in every game, and all of the players are trying to control this site. They will get points for it. And you've also got the rivers as well. So where you've got a river, it actually blocks movement unless you've got ships. So you can't move from there to there because of the river. Anyway, that is the map tiles which you use to create the board. These are 1.5 mil, but they're fairly chunky. So yeah, there you go. That's those. Right, let's have a look at the rest of it. Wooden pieces. Now, there's lots of these. And these are different depending on the players. So basically you have all sorts of different types of pieces. The colours are the player colours. But these are forts. So you have forts and you have castles. which are basically providing you with military strength. And you also have settlements. Now, the settlements are built by the Sultan, and the settlements don't have any military strength, but they do have influence. Let me go to the zoom in point again and show you what these look like. So yeah, these are all of the different pieces. This is the palace, which is unique to the Caliph. So only the Caliph has a palace. As I said, the rules are different for each one, but most of the players can build forts. That's the Warlord, that's the Murshid, that's the Sultan, that's the Nomad. Yeah, so all players can build forts, and I think all players can build castles as well. Yeah, all players can build castles. There is a different number of pieces for each player as well. So forts, castles and settlements is those. And then you also have these. So these are the units. And there are two different types of units in the game. There are ordinary units and there are mercenary units. And different factions can have different units. So basically the Warlord, for example, can have ordinary units or can have mercenary units as well. But some of the other ones can only have mercenary units. Basically, these are screen printed on one side and you use whichever side you're using. So these are the units. These are quite thin pieces, actually. But, you know, you can pick them up, you can move them around. So that's the units. We've then got the cards. So the card play in this game is interesting. Considering the number of cards that you get in the game, you're not actually going to be playing that many of them. Certainly in our game last night, because you only get 12 actions in the entire game. The game's divided into 3 years, and in each year, each player is going to get 4 turns, and on your turn, you basically do 1 action. So you're only going to get to do 12 actions in the whole game, and one of the actions that you can do is to collect cards. But yeah, so these are the cards. Now, the Warfare card is what the Warlord starts with, so the Warlord has that card in hand. The rest of the cards are shuffled and they are placed in an offer. Now you'll notice there is not an equal number. These are some reference cards. They are absolutely necessary. You will notice from these cards there's a lot of purple cards, which are the Murshid's cards. Then there are some of the Caliph's cards. Then there are some of the Nomad's cards. And there's a few Warlord cards. There are no cards for the Sultan. And what's interesting about this game is these cards are going to be laid out in an offer. And when you buy a card, you actually pay the owner of that card the money. So the Murshid is going to have a lot of cards in the offer, and when people buy these cards, they're going to be giving the money to the Murshid. If you buy your own card, you only pay half of it. But anyway, yeah, there's lots of cards in the game, but you're not going to be getting that many cards. So the reference cards, yeah, these are really, really important. There are 2 types of conflict in the game. There is combat, which is military contest, and there's influence contest. Those are probably the most complicated rules in the game, which is why each player, there is 5 of each of these, each player has a reference card which goes through all of the steps of combat and all of the steps of influence. And I'd forgotten that these were in the game. So when we were playing it last night, I kept looking at the rule book, but actually, once you know how these work, you can use these cards. And then there are other cards that for certain other players. Right, let's have a look at these bags, because these cloth bags, excuse the rustling for a minute, these are really, really nice, and I think these are for the victory points. Unless I'm mistaken, I think these are for the victory points, and I'm not quite sure. Osprey Games are in the chat, so I'm not quite sure why these are as big as they need to be, unless the idea is that you put all of your pieces in the bag at the end of the game for storage, and then during the game you take them out and you use the bag for your victory points, because in this game victory points are secret. These are the victory point counters, which are these crescent moons, obviously because the game's called Crescent Moon. So you have 10s, you have 5s, you have 3s and you have 1s. I'm doing Paul's punch test. These are punching out okay. And yeah, whenever you get victory points, they are secret, so you put them in your bag. Okay, maybe it's just that big because you got to get your hand in. But yeah, it definitely doesn't need to be that big to hold all of the victory points that you're going to get. But yeah, victory points are secret in this game. Right, let's have a look at the rest of the punch card components. But yeah, these bags are nice, and as well as the colours, they've got the printing on. It's just a little nice touch. And yeah, proper cloth. So, I mentioned that there's no board in the game, but there is the market, and the market is made up of these three pieces, if you can get it out. Got it out at a funny angle. There we go. So yeah, what you do is you line these up by the side of the game board, and you have the far market, the middle market, and the near market. And what you do is you basically lay the cards out, and you put one in each slot. And the cards here are more expensive. These cost 6, these cost 4, these cost 2. And as I mentioned, when you buy somebody else's card, the money goes to them. The money is these counters. So this is punching out, not completely cleanly, just have to be a bit careful when you take it out. But it's okay. And then you have these influence counters as well. So one thing that's, I think, fascinating about this game is when you've got the board built up, you have all sorts of different types of control of a hex. Well, you've got presence, which basically means you've got a piece in there. You've got control, which means you have control of the hex, and then there can only be one player that's got control of the hex at any time, and you get control of a hex with military forces. So if I had like a couple of camels in there, then I would have control of that hex. I also have presence in that hex. But if the Sultan had an influence marker there, then the Sultan also has presence in the hex, and the Sultan has influence. But then somebody else might have, for example, there might be a town in there. Now the Sultan, that's a Sultan's piece, but then another player, for example the Murshid, the sneaky Murshid, might have influence. So there is an area control aspect to the game, and the players will be basically fighting over these hexes in terms of control, presence, influence, and all sorts of things. Yeah, so that's how that works. They could also be used for cards during contests and conflicts. Yes. Yeah, true. Because the way that the card play works when you have a contest is interesting, because each player involved in the contest can play any number of cards from their hand, but the number of cards they play is secret. So what Brendan's saying is what Brett's saying is that you could actually use the bags. You could, hide them under the table or something like that, put a certain number of cards in them, and then say, right, there you go. Those are the cards that I'm playing in the combat, and nobody will know until you open the bag afterwards. That could be quite a good thing. Yeah, so that's quite an interesting idea. When you're attacking somebody in the game and they've got a whole bunch of cards in hand, you don't know how many of those cards you're going to play. Anyway, that is pretty much it. Oh, we've got this. Yes. So we have, this is the action tracker, and I think there should be a piece. Hopefully there's a piece. Where is it? There's supposed to be a piece that goes on here. Oh, it's one of those. Right. Okay. So what you've got is, this is the turn sequence or the round sequence. So there's three of these years. We've got a year tracker as well. Yeah, we've got a year tracker. Oh, you can also play a 4-year game as well. There is an optional rule where you can play for 4 years instead of 3. And what you do is you put one marker there and one marker there. And then after you've done the income step, you move it on to reserves, and then you do the reserves. Then you move it on to upkeep, and you do the upkeep, etc., etc. So you move this marker along to track the flow of the game, and then you move this marker along to show what year you're in. You can store victory points face down as well. Yes. Okay, yeah, so the victory point counters, good point, Anthony. When you play it on Tabletop Simulator, you can't do it face down because, the pieces are only one-sided. But Anthony's exactly right. These victory point counters are all exactly the same shape, and therefore if you store them face down, nobody knows how many you've got. So, there you go. So the bags are mainly for storing wooden pieces. Right, okay, cool. Or, as Brett says, use them in combat. That's everything. Yeah, that is all of the components you get. Let's just have a closer look at the cards and some of the artwork that's on them. So yeah, you've got basically who owns the card, what type of card it is, you've got the artwork, and then you've got the effect of the card. So there are a lot of cards which are very similar. So the Murshid has lots of cards which are very sneaky. So you've got assassination, you've got intimidation, and the card that came out last night quite a lot was the corrupt card. So what's interesting about the corrupt card is when you play it, it has an effect on your opponent, but then at the end of that combat or influence, they take this card into their hand. So what we had last night is the first card played was a corrupt card. It affected the other player, and then they had the corrupt card in hand. So everybody knew this corrupt card kept moving around the board. So yeah, the Murshid's cards are all about doing sneaky backstabby type stuff. The Caliph's cards is mainly about combat, but there are some ships which you can use to cross the rivers, some siege engines as well, and then the Nomads is the 5th player. So I mentioned that this is either a 4 or 5 player game. If you are playing with 5 players, you use the Nomads. If you are playing with 4 players, you do not use the Nomads. And all of the rules of the game are written in both ways. So if the Nomads are in the game, the Nomads are in charge of the mercenaries. So whenever you hire mercenaries or anything like that, they are actually coming from the Nomad player. If you're playing with 4 players, they just come from the sort of central supply. But yeah, they're the Nomads cards. The Warlord doesn't have many cards, but these are pretty much all combat related. Anyway, that's the cards. So what's going to happen is I'm going to be playing this game on Sunday at a games day. So I've got 5 people lined up for that. And then at some point near the start of March, so at some point in the next couple of weeks, I am going to be filming a tutorial and playthrough of a 5-player game of this. So if you are interested in learning how to play the game, if you're a Patreon supporter, you have access to the behind the scenes videos from last night if you were interested. But I will be doing a full video on the channel at some point in the next few weeks. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly when the game is out. I think it's going to be out, again, if Osprey are in the chat, they can let us know when the game's actually due for release in various countries. But yeah, if you're interested in it, keep an eye on it. As I say, it's a 4 or 5 player. It's got an area control mechanism is sort of the main part of it, but it's very asymmetric in the way that it plays. Each of the different factions plays in a different way. They all have their own objectives, and they will all score points in a different way. And I think experience, certainly the game we played last night, none of us really knew what we were doing or how each of them played. But yeah, they very much play in a different way, and I think it rewards repeated plays. If you know how to play a certain faction, you can't just go into the game and go, oh, I'm just going to play it and I'm just going to move around. You need to play to the strengths of your particular faction. 26th of May it's due out. Oh, right. Okay, so UK Games Expo is when it's going to be released. Excellent. I've got plenty of time to do the video then. Anyway, we're all done. Thank you very much for joining me. A big thank you to all of my Patreon supporters that fund the channel. Obviously, this was just a quick unboxing video, but I do rely on the support of the Patreon campaign to fund the channel and keep things going. So if you like the content that I create, please consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/gaming rules. As mentioned, there are a lot of benefits to being a patron. You get access to the Slack channel, which is the community, but you also get access to a lot of behind the scenes videos, including 4 of us last night learning how to play this. We're all done. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.